"Daddy, help her." The single dad janitor faces three men, and something surprising happens. Emma's whispered voice cut through the low hum of the restaurant like a blade slicing through air. Nathan Carter felt his blood run cold when his 10-year-old daughter discreetly tugged the sleeve of his faded blue shirt, the same one he wore every night for his janitorial work at Southern Flavor Restaurant in the heart of Charlotte. Emma pointed with a small, trembling finger toward a table in the darkest corner of the dining room, where three men in dark suits surrounded a young waitress. The girl was clearly pregnant, her rounded belly barely concealed by the tight restaurant uniform. The waitress's black hair fell across her face as if she wanted to hide from the world, and her hands shook as she held some papers the men insisted she sign. Nathan knew that look of desperation well. It was the same one he'd seen in the mirror 8 years ago, when he lost his factory job and had to accept anything to support Emma after his wife abandoned them. The same look of someone with no choice, who accepts any humiliation to survive another day. "Daddy, they're hurting her with bad words," Emma whispered again, her childish voice heavy with the concern no child should feel. "Olivia from my school said her sister works here and is always crying." Nathan's heart raced. Olivia was a girl in Emma's class who always came to school with dirty clothes and a hungry expression on her face. Now he understood why. The waitress at the table was Ashley, Olivia's older sister, and she was being pressured by the three men in a way that reminded Nathan of his own toughest moments. The tallest man, a fellow about 50 with neatly combed grey hair and an expression of superiority on his face, tapped his index finger on the papers with excessive force. Nathan could hear fragments of the conversation as he discreetly approached with his water bucket and mop. "Listen carefully, girl. You have no choice. Either sign this contract or tomorrow I'll make a call and you'll be back in your country before you know it," the man said, his voice carrying a cruel authority that made Ashley shrink further into her chair. The second man, younger, maybe about 40, added with a fake smile that didn't reach his eyes, "Think about your baby, dear. Here you at least have a roof and food. Back where you came from, what will happen to both of you?" The third, a thin man with glasses and a nervous expression, just nodded in agreement, but Nathan noticed he seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. Ashley raised her tear-filled eyes, and Nathan saw in them the same vulnerability he felt when he needed to beg for a job. She couldn't be more than 22, alone in the world, pregnant, and these men knew exactly how to exploit her fragility. "Please," her voice came out in a thread, "I need more time to think. I don't understand everything written here." "There's nothing to think about," the older man practically growled. "You work 12 hours a day at my 3 restaurants, hand over 60% of your salary to us as a protection fee, and keep your mouth shut. In return, we don't report your undocumented status." Nathan felt his blood boil. That wasn't work. It was modern-day slavery in disguise. He'd been through similar situations in the past, but had never had the courage to react. He always lowered his head, accepted the humiliations, thought only about surviving one more day to take care of Emma. But seeing a pregnant young woman going through the same suffering he knew so well awakened something different inside him. Emma was right. They needed to help Ashley. "Daddy," Emma whispered again, now tugging more firmly on her father's shirt, "you always taught me that we have to help those who are suffering. She's suffering a lot." Nathan looked at his daughter, that brave girl with blonde hair and blue eyes she had inherited from her mother, and saw in her a purity he had lost long ago. Emma still believed the world could be fair, that the right people always won in the end, that it was enough to have the courage to do the right thing. "Are you sure, Princess?" he asked quietly, knowing that if he decided to intervene, he could lose the job he so desperately needed. "It could be dangerous for us." "Yes, Daddy, we can't pretend we didn't see." At that moment, Nathan made the decision that would change the lives of everyone at the table. He took a deep breath and approached the group, pretending he needed to clean the area around the table. "Good evening," he said in a firm but respectful voice. "I need to clean here real quick, if you'll allow me." The 3 men looked at him as if he were a bothersome insect. The group's leader didn't even bother to reply, just made a dismissive gesture with his hand for him to move away. "Is everything all right, miss?" Nathan asked directly to Ashley, who looked up surprised. It was rare for anyone to care about her in that place. "What did you say, janitor?" The older man turned to Nathan with a look of growing irritation. "Nobody asked for your opinion." Nathan felt the adrenaline rush through his veins. It was now or never. "I just want to make sure our employee is okay. It's part of my job to keep the restaurant a safe place for everyone." "Your job is to mop the floor and shut up," the second man spoke up, rising from his chair in a clear attempt at intimidation. "Go back to your buckets and let the adults talk." But Nathan didn't back down. Years of humiliation had taught him that there comes a moment when you have to choose between keeping your dignity or keeping your safety. And looking at Ashley, seeing the despair in her eyes, he chose dignity. "Actually," Nathan said, surprising everyone with his calmness, "I understand Spanish fluently, and I heard you threatening this young woman." The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley's eyes widened, surprised to find out someone had understood the threats whispered in her native language. The three men exchanged nervous glances. "You don't know who you're messing with, low-rate janitor." The leader stood up too, now clearly angry. "I can make you lose this job with a snap of my fingers." "And I can make you lose much more than that," Nathan replied, keeping his voice low but firm. "I know labor laws very well, and I know what you're doing here is completely illegal." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The tension at the table increased exponentially. The youngest man seemed even more uncomfortable, nervously adjusting his glasses and looking around as if searching for an exit. The second man clenched his fists, clearly ready for a physical confrontation. "Do you really want to risk your little girl for a foreigner you don't even know?" the leader whispered in a venomous voice. "Because I can guarantee that if you keep sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, it won't just be your job that's at risk." Nathan felt the world stop for a moment. The veiled threat against Emma was like a punch to the gut. He looked at his daughter, who remained by his side with impressive courage for a 10-year-old. "Daddy," Emma said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "you always told me that we have to protect those who can't protect themselves. Isn't that what heroes do?" The child's innocence cut through the air like a knife. Even the man with glasses seemed touched by the girl's words. Nathan saw tears forming in Ashley's eyes, who probably hadn't heard words of kindness in a long time. "That's right, Princess," Nathan replied, placing a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "And sometimes being a hero means doing the right thing, even when it's scary." The group's leader completely lost his composure. "Enough of this nonsense. Stephen, call the manager right now. This imbecile is going to be fired on the spot." "No need to call anyone," a deep voice sounded behind them. It was Richard, the restaurant manager, a 55-year-old man who always treated the employees with harshness. "I'm already here." Nathan felt his heart sink. Richard was known for favoring wealthy customers and not caring much about the employees' well-being. If he was on the three men's side, the situation would become even more difficult. "Richard, this janitor is interfering with our business," the leader said with a confident smile. "Fire him now and we'll even give you an extra tip for the inconvenience." But what happened next took everyone by surprise. Richard looked at the table, saw the papers that Ashley was holding, and his expression changed completely. "What business is this, Mr. Harrison?" Richard asked in a more serious tone than Nathan had ever heard. "Because from what I see here, you're forcing my employee to sign something against her will." The man named Harrison seemed momentarily confused. "Richard, you know very well we have an agreement. We're not going to change the rules now." "What agreement?" Richard asked, now clearly irritated. "I never authorized any kind of abusive contract in my restaurant." Harrison's expression changed quickly, from confident to nervous in a matter of seconds. "You mean you didn't... that Brandon didn't tell you about..." "Brandon didn't tell me about what?" Richard's voice now had a dangerous tone. Nathan realized there was something much more complex happening there. Brandon was the restaurant's assistant manager, a young and ambitious man who always seemed to be scheming something. Apparently, he had made agreements without Richard's knowledge. "Ashley," Richard addressed the waitress directly, "did these men force you to sign something?" Ashley looked nervously between Richard and the three men. Her voice came out in a trembling whisper. They said if I didn't sign they would report me and I would be deported." Richard's expression darkened like a storm forming. "And what exactly does this contract say?" The man with glasses, clearly the most nervous of the trio, tried to intervene. "Richard, perhaps it would be better if we talked about this in private." "No." Richard was categorical. "I want to know now, in front of everyone, what kind of business you were conducting in my establishment without my knowledge." Nathan saw an opportunity and took it. "With your permission, Mr. Richard, I can explain what I heard." "Speak," Richard authorized, crossing his arms. "They were forcing Ashley to accept working 12 hours a day in several restaurants and hand over 60% of her salary as a protection fee. They used her undocumented status to blackmail her." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Richard looked at the three men with a mixture of anger and disgust that Nathan had never seen on his face before. "Get out of my restaurant," Richard said in a low, controlled voice that was more threatening than any shout. "Now." "Richard, you're making a mistake," Harrison tried to argue. "We have influence in this city. We can cause serious problems for your business." "And I can cause serious problems for you too," Richard retorted. "Exploitation of vulnerable workers is a serious matter. Now leave before I call who needs to be called." The three men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this reaction. The man with glasses was the first to stand up, obviously relieved to have an excuse to get out of that situation. "Let's go," he said to the other two. "This has gone too far." Harrison and the second man stood up reluctantly, but before leaving, Harrison turned to Nathan with an expression of pure hatred. "This isn't over, cleaner. You don't know who you're messing with." "I know exactly who I'm messing with," Nathan replied calmly. "With men who take advantage of pregnant and vulnerable women, and I'm not afraid of people like that." After the three men left, a strange silence fell over the table. Ashley still held the papers with trembling hands, as if she couldn't believe the situation had actually ended. "Ashley," Richard said in a much gentler voice, "are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "No, sir," she replied in heavily accented English. "Thank you for protecting me." "The one who protected you was Nathan here." Richard looked at the cleaner with an expression Nathan had never seen before. "Respect." "I didn't even know this nonsense was happening in my own restaurant." Emma, who had remained quiet during the entire confrontation, finally spoke up. "Uncle Richard, Ashley needs help. She's expecting a baby and has no family here." Richard knelt to the girl's height, impressed by her maturity. "And you think we should help her?" "I think everyone deserves to be treated with kindness," Emma replied with the typical sincerity of children. "My daddy always says we're stronger when we help others." Richard smiled for the first time since Nathan had known him. "Your daughter is very wise, Nathan. She's always been smarter than her father," Nathan replied, running his hand through Emma's blonde hair. "Ashley," Richard addressed the waitress again, "I want you to tear up those papers right now, and tomorrow you and I will talk about your working conditions. We'll make sure you have fair hours, fair pay, and all the protection a pregnant employee deserves." Ashley began to cry, but this time they were tears of relief. She tore the papers into small pieces, and each piece that fell to the floor seemed to take away a little of the fear she carried. "Thank you," she said, hugging Emma first, and then Nathan. "Thank you for not pretending you didn't see." "We'll always see when someone needs help," Emma said with a seriousness that moved all the adults present. But the night was far from over. As Ashley calmed down and Richard arranged for her to be taken home safely, a new figure appeared in the restaurant. It was Brandon, the assistant manager, and by the expression on his face he was not happy at all. "Richard, where are the gentlemen from the meeting?" Brandon asked, looking around nervously. "They called me saying there was a misunderstanding." "What meeting, Brandon?" Richard turned to him with his arms crossed. "And what misunderstanding?" Brandon realized he had fallen into a trap. His expression changed from nervous to defensive in a matter of seconds. It was just a simple business, Richard. A way to help some employees regularize their situation." "By exploiting them and taking part of their salary?" Nathan spoke up, surprising Brandon, who clearly didn't expect a cleaner to interfere in the conversation. "Who gave you the right to speak, cleaner?" Brandon tried to regain control of the situation. "Go back to your work." "Everyone has the right to speak," Richard intervened. "And from what I'm understanding, Nathan has more decency than you, Brandon." The conversation was interrupted when Mrs. Dorothy, one of the oldest cooks at the restaurant, a 62-year-old woman who had worked there for over 15 years, approached the group. "Mr. Richard," she said in a tired voice, "can I say something?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy, always." "This thing that Brandon was doing, it wasn't just with Ashley. There are more people suffering because of it." Richard's blood seemed to freeze in his veins. "What do you mean, Mrs. Dorothy?" "There's Michael from cleaning, Jessica who works as a waitress on weekends, David from the kitchen. All of them are being forced to give part of their salary to Brandon and his friends." Brandon tried to interrupt. "Mrs. Dorothy, you don't understand how these things work." "I do understand, young man," Mrs. Dorothy replied, with a firmness that surprised everyone. "I understand that you're taking advantage of people who have nowhere to turn, and that's wrong." Nathan saw that the situation was much bigger than he had imagined. It wasn't just Ashley being exploited. It was an organized scheme to take advantage of the restaurant's most vulnerable employees. "Brandon," Richard said in a dangerously low voice, "you're fired. Get your things and leave now." "You can't fire me for this, Richard. I have rights." "You have the right to leave on your own or leave with security's help. Choose." Brandon looked around, probably searching for support, but found only looks of disappointment and anger. Even the employees who normally respected him now stared at him with contempt. "This isn't over," Brandon said before leaving. "You'll regret this." After Brandon left, the restaurant fell into a heavy silence. Richard ran his hand over his face, clearly processing the magnitude of what he had discovered. "Everyone," he said to all the employees who had gathered around, "I want all those affected by this scheme to come talk with me tomorrow. We're going to fix this situation." "Mr. Richard," Nathan spoke up hesitantly. "Can I suggest something?" "Of course, Nathan." "Today you've proven that your opinions are very valuable. Maybe it would be good for us to meet all together to talk about this. Sometimes people are afraid to speak alone, but in a group it becomes easier." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Good idea. Tomorrow after hours we'll have a meeting with all employees." "What about Ashley?" Emma asked, always concerned about others. "Is she going to be okay?" "She's going to be just fine," Richard assured the girl. "And you and your father are heroes for helping her." "We just did what we had to do," Nathan said modestly. "No," Richard shook his head. "You did much more than that. You did what was right, even knowing it could cause problems for you." Mrs. Dorothy approached Nathan and put her hand on his shoulder. "Young man, you have a courage that many people twice your age don't have, and this girl of yours is a blessing." "Thank you, Mrs. Dorothy. But it was Emma who taught me that we can't pretend we don't see others suffering. Daddy always told me that we have to take care of each other," Emma explained with her childlike simplicity. "Because if everyone takes care of everyone, nobody is left alone." The girl's words deeply touched everyone present. Many of the employees had tears in their eyes, moved by the purity and wisdom of that child. That night, after everyone had left, Nathan stayed a little longer to finish cleaning. Emma was sleeping in a chair in the corner, wrapped in her father's coat. She always accompanied him at work because they didn't have money to pay for a babysitter. Richard approached him as he finished mopping the floor. "Nathan, can I talk with you for a minute?" "Of course, Mr. Richard." "First, I want to apologize. I didn't know that Brandon was pulling this nasty stuff with the employees. If I had known, I would have put a stop to it much sooner." "You don't need to apologize. There was no way for you to know if no one said anything." "But there was. I should have paid more attention to what happens with my employees. I should know your difficulties better." Nathan stopped wiping the counter and looked at Richard, surprised by his sincerity. "Second," Richard continued, "I want to offer you a promotion. How about supervisor of cleaning and maintenance, with a better salary and more flexible hours, so you can take better care of Emma?" Nathan was speechless for a moment. "Mr. Richard, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Emma spoke from the chair, apparently more awake than she seemed. "Daddy, you deserve good things." Richard laughed at the girl's spontaneity. "She's right, Nathan. You deserve good things, and more importantly, you have the trust of the other employees. They respect you." "I accept, Mr. Richard, and thank you very much. I'm the one who should be thanking you. You opened my eyes to problems I wasn't seeing." In the following days, the Southern Flavor restaurant underwent a complete transformation. The meeting with all employees revealed that the exploitation scheme was even bigger than they had imagined. Brandon had created a network of extortion that affected not only the restaurant's employees, but also workers from other establishments in the area. Nathan discovered that his courage in defending Ashley had inspired other employees to speak up about the abuses they suffered. Michael, a 58-year-old man who did heavy cleaning, revealed that Brandon forced him to work weekends without extra pay by threatening to fire him. Jessica, a 23-year-old who worked as a waitress on weekends to pay for college, told how Brandon forced her to accept inappropriate advances from wealthy customers, saying that if she complained, she would lose her job. David, the 28-year-old kitchen helper, revealed that Brandon sold the meals the employees were entitled to and forced them to bring food from home or go hungry during work. Each story that came out in the meeting left Richard more horrified by what had happened in his own establishment without him knowing. Nathan became a kind of unofficial spokesperson for the employees, helping the more timid ones tell their experiences. "Everyone," Richard said at the end of the meeting, "I want you to know that this will never happen here again. We'll create new rules, a direct communication channel with me, and no one will be afraid to speak up when something is wrong." "How can we be sure?" asked Jessica, still hesitant to trust completely. "Because now you have Nathan as supervisor," Richard answered. "And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that he won't let anyone be mistreated here." Ashley, who was present at the meeting, stood up and asked to speak. "I wanted to thank everyone, especially Nathan and Emma. You gave me more than a better job, you gave me hope." She was visibly more confident, with an upright posture and a sparkle in her eyes that she didn't have before. Richard had kept his promise to improve her working conditions, ensuring suitable hours for a pregnant woman, medical assistance, and a fair salary. "And I want to say something to all of you," Ashley continued. "Before meeting you, I thought the world was a bad place where only the strong survive. But you showed me that there are good people willing to help, even when it's difficult." Her words moved everyone in the room. Mrs. Dorothy, ever maternal, stood up and hugged the young woman. "My dear, you're part of our family now, and family takes care of each other." "That's true," Michael agreed in his deep, warm voice. "No one stays alone here." David spoke up for the first time in the meeting. "Nathan, thank you for setting the example. I was afraid to talk about what was happening, but seeing you stand up for Ashley gave me courage." "No need to thank me," Nathan replied. "We just need to keep looking out for each other, and whatever problem someone has, we solve it together." Emma, who was at the meeting because Nathan had no one to leave her with, raised her little hand asking to speak. Everyone smiled at the girl's seriousness. "Can I say something?" "Of course, Princess," Richard said affectionately. "I think you're all very brave, and I think this place is going to be much happier now." The child's simplicity and sincerity touched everyone's hearts. Several people in the room had teary eyes, moved by the purity of that girl who had been the catalyst for all the change. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 weeks after the incident, everyone's life at the restaurant had changed dramatically. Nathan was adapting well to his new position as supervisor, discovering he had a natural talent for leading and motivating people. He implemented a communication system where any employee could report problems directly to him or Richard, without fear of retaliation. Emma continued accompanying her father to work some nights, but now had a special corner prepared by Mrs. Dorothy, with colorful cushions and some books for her to read while Nathan worked. The girl had become the restaurant's unofficial mascot, always welcomed with smiles and affection by the employees. Ashley was flourishing in her new work environment. Richard had hired a social worker to help her with the documentation needed to regularize her situation in the country. The young woman had also started taking Portuguese classes at night, determined to improve her communication and have more opportunities in the future. But not everything was completely resolved. Brandon hadn't given up on his revenge, and Harrison remained active in the area, trying to set up similar schemes in other establishments. Nathan knew they needed to remain vigilant. One night, while Nathan was doing his final rounds through the restaurant, he noticed a suspicious man standing on the sidewalk across the street, watching the activity. It was the second man from the trio that had tried to exploit Ashley, the one who seemed less convinced of the group's actions. Nathan decided to approach. He left the restaurant and walked over to where the man was. "Can I help you with something?" The man startled, clearly not expecting to be approached. I was just passing by." "You've been standing there for 2 hours. That's not just passing by." The man looked around nervously, then sighed deeply. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you." "To me? About what?" "About that night. About what happened to the waitress." Nathan became alert but remained calm. "What about that night?" I wanted to apologize. What we did was wrong. Very wrong." The sincerity in the man's voice took Nathan by surprise. "What's your name?" Stephen Mitchell." "All right, Stephen, why are you here?" Stephen hesitated for a moment before answering. "Because I can't sleep at night thinking about what we did to that girl, and because I need to warn you about something." "Warn me about what?" "Harrison hasn't given up. He's planning something against you and the restaurant. I'm not sure exactly what, but I know he's furious about being humiliated in front of everyone." Nathan felt a chill in his stomach. "What kind of thing is he planning?" "He has contacts at City Hall, the health department, the IRS. He can cause a lot of trouble for the restaurant with false reports, made-up fines, that sort of thing." "And why are you telling me this?" Stephen lowered his eyes, clearly ashamed. "Because I have a daughter the same age as yours, and when I saw her defending the waitress that night, I imagined my daughter doing the same thing, and I thought about how proud I would be of her for having the courage to do what's right. And how you'd be ashamed of yourself for doing the opposite," Nathan completed without malice in his voice. "Exactly. I want to try to fix at least some of the damage I helped cause." Nathan studied Stephen's face for a moment, trying to determine if he could trust him. There was sincerity in his eyes and a deep sadness that spoke of genuine regret. "Stephen, if you really want to help, I need to know everything about Harrison's plans, and I need to know about other places where you were doing the same thing you tried to do here." Stephen nodded vigorously. "I'll tell you everything I know, but it has to be quick because if Harrison finds out I spoke with you, it'll be bad for both of us." "Then let's go inside the restaurant and talk properly." They entered Southern Flavor, where Richard was still closing out the register. Upon seeing Stephen, Richard immediately went on alert. "Nathan, who is this man?" "It's a long story, Richard, but he has important information that can help us." Richard was suspicious, but decided to listen. Stephen then told everything he knew about Harrison's operations in the region. The scheme was much bigger than they had imagined, involving dozens of restaurants, snack bars, and small businesses. Harrison had created a true network exploiting vulnerable workers, especially immigrants and people in desperate financial situations. "He has a list of over 200 people being exploited this way," Stephen revealed. "And the worst part is that there are people from the community itself helping him, people who should be protecting these workers." "What kind of people?" Nathan asked. "Employment agency workers, people who handle documentation, even some community leaders who get commissions for referring vulnerable people." Richard was visibly shocked. "And City Hall? The police? No one knows about this?" "Some do," Stephen admitted reluctantly. "But Harrison has a lot of money and many connections. He always manages to cover up reports or intimidate anyone who tries to speak up." "But he made a mistake," Nathan said thoughtfully. "He messed with the wrong place, in front of the wrong people." "What do you mean?" Stephen asked. "He tried to intimidate an innocent child and a pregnant woman in front of people who don't accept that kind of thing. And now there are a lot of people who know the truth and won't stay quiet." Richard nodded with determination. "Nathan is right. We're not going to let this slide." Stephen looked hopeful for the first time since he had arrived. Do you really think you can do something against Harrison? We know we can, Nathan replied with conviction, because we're not alone. There's an entire community here that cares about what happens to others. And there's a 10-year-old girl who taught me that age doesn't matter when it comes to doing the right thing, Richard added with a smile. Stephen smiled too, for the first time in weeks. Your daughter is really special, Nathan. She reminded me of who I used to be before I let myself be carried away by greed. It's never too late to become that person again, Nathan said kindly. Emma always says everyone deserves a second chance to do what's right. She's right, Stephen agreed, and I want to take advantage of my second chance. In the days that followed, Stephen became a valuable ally in the fight against the exploitation scheme. He provided detailed information about Harrison's operations, including addresses of other involved establishments, names of people being exploited, and details about how the scheme worked. With this information, Richard and Nathan organized a support network that spread throughout the community. They contacted other business owners who had been victims of similar blackmail and discovered that many were willing to unite against Harrison. Mrs. Margaret, a 70-year-old woman who owned a small bakery in the neighborhood, was one of the first to join the group. She had been pressured by Brandon and his associates to accept workers under abusive conditions, under threat of trouble with inspectors. Son, she said to Nathan during a meeting at the bakery, I always knew that was wrong, but I was afraid. A woman my age alone can't stand up to these men. But you're not alone, Emma said from the table where she was eating a sugar bun that Mrs. Margaret had offered. Now we're all one big family. Mrs. Margaret smiled at the girl and then looked at Nathan. Your daughter is right. Together we are much stronger. And more people are joining every day, Nathan added. Yesterday the folks from Mr. Anthony's grocery decided to participate too. Mr. Anthony was a 65-year-old Portuguese man who had immigrated to Brazil in his youth and built a small empire of grocery stores in the neighborhood. He had been one of Harrison's first victims, forced to accept workers in poor conditions under threat of having his establishments bombarded with false complaints. Harrison messed with the wrong people when he messed with you, Mr. Anthony had said at the previous day's meeting. You have something he doesn't, the community's respect. Ashley also became an important part of the support network. Her fluency in Spanish and her personal experience with exploitation made her a valuable bridge to reach other immigrants who were suffering in silence. Many people are afraid to speak, she explained to the group during one of the meetings. They think if they speak up, they'll be deported or lose the little they have. And how do we convince them they can trust us? Nathan asked. By showing that you truly care, that it's not just talk, Ashley replied. People can feel when someone is being sincere. The strategy worked. Word by word, person by person, the support network grew. In 3 weeks, they had documented over 80 cases of labor exploitation in the region, all connected to Harrison's scheme. But the progress did not go unnoticed. Harrison began putting even more pressure on his victims, trying to find out who was betraying the scheme. Several workers reported more direct threats and intimidation attempts. One night, Nathan arrived at work and found the restaurant's windows vandalized with offensive words. The next day, Richard received a visit from the health inspectors with a list of supposed violations that had clearly been fabricated. They're trying to scare us, Nathan said to Richard while they cleaned the graffiti. They want us to give up. And will they succeed? Richard asked, testing his friend's determination. Not if it depends on me, Nathan replied firmly. And I don't think it depends on anyone here. As if to confirm his words, Mrs. Dorothy appeared with a bucket of paint and brushes. We came to help repaint, she said, followed by Ashley, Michael, David, and several other employees. You don't have to do this, Richard said, moved by the gesture. Of course we do, David replied. This place is ours too, and no one's going to intimidate our family. Emma, who had been watching from a distance, approached the group. Daddy, can I help paint too? Of course, Princess. But be careful not to get dirty. I don't mind getting dirty if it means making our place beautiful again, she answered, picking up a small brush. As they worked together to repair the damage, other community members began to appear. Mrs. Margaret brought coffee and bread for everyone. Mr. Anthony arrived with more paint and cleaning supplies. Stephen showed up with tools to fix a window that had been damaged. Looks like a community effort, Ashley observed, smiling as she painted. That's exactly what it is, Mrs. Dorothy agreed. A community effort against evil. And against fear, Michael added, because alone we're afraid, but together we're brave. The scene caught the attention of other neighborhood residents. People stopped to ask what was happening, and when they learned the story, many offered help. An elderly lady offered cold water to everyone. A young man helped carry heavy materials. An entire family volunteered to help with the painting. "Daddy," Emma whispered to Nathan while painting, "did you see how many good people there are in the world?" "I did, Princess. Many more good people than bad ones." "Then why are we always afraid of the bad ones?" The girl's question made Nathan stop and think. It was a profound observation coming from a 10-year-old. "You know what, Emma? I think it's because the bad ones make a lot of noise, so we hear them more. But the good ones are quiet. They do good without fanfare." "Like you all," she said, pointing to everyone who was helping in the community effort. Nobody asked them to come, but they came anyway. Richard, who had overheard the conversation, knelt beside Emma. "You know what your daughter just discovered, Nathan? She discovered the secret to beating the bad ones." "What secret?" Emma asked, curious. "The secret is to gather the good ones. When the good ones come together and stop being quiet, they're much stronger than the bad ones." "Is that why you're doing all this? To gather the good ones?" "That's exactly why," Richard confirmed. "And you're the one who taught us that, Emma. You're the one who showed us we can't pretend not to see others suffering." The girl was thoughtful for a moment, then smiled. "So I helped?" "You didn't just help, Princess," Nathan said, hugging his daughter. "You started all this." That night, when the community effort ended, the restaurant was not only repaired, but more beautiful than before. The walls gleamed with fresh paint, the windows were crystal clear, and a new sign had been installed at the entrance. "Southern Flavor Restaurant, where everyone is family." "It looks beautiful," Ashley said, admiring the result. "It looks like a place where people care about each other," Mrs. Dorothy observed. "Because that's exactly what this place is," Richard declared, "and that's what our community is going to be." But they knew the war was far from over. Harrison hadn't given up, and his retaliations were getting more aggressive. 2 days after the community effort, Stephen showed up at the restaurant with a black eye and several scratches on his face. "What happened?" Nathan asked, worried. "Harrison found out I was helping you," Stephen said, carefully touching his injured eye. "He sent 2 thugs to convince me to stop." "Are you going to stop?" Richard asked. Stephen laughed bitterly. "Stop? Now that he's given me more reasons to continue, no way." "But it's dangerous, Stephen," Nathan warned. "He could do worse." "He could. But do you know what's even more dangerous? Letting him continue doing what he's doing. Many people are suffering because of him, and if we don't do anything, it will keep happening." Emma, who was listening to the conversation from the table where she was doing homework, looked up from her notebook. "Uncle Stephen, are you bleeding?" Stephen touched the cut on his eyebrow that was still bleeding a little. "Yes, I am, little one, but it's nothing serious." Emma stood up, grabbed some napkins, and approached Stephen. "My teacher said that when someone is hurt, we have to take care of them. Can I clean the blood for you?" The child's kindness moved Stephen deeply. He knelt down to her level and let her carefully clean the cut. "Thank you, Emma. You're very brave." "I'm not brave," she replied with her childlike honesty. "I just do what Mommy would have done if she was still here." Stephen looked at Nathan with a questioning expression. Nathan made a discreet sign indicating that his wife had passed away. "I'm sure your Mommy would be very proud of you," Stephen said softly. "Do you think so?" Emma asked with shining eyes. "I'm sure she raised a very special girl." "Daddy raised me," Emma corrected. "He's the one who taught me to help others." "Then you both did a very good job," Stephen said, looking at Nathan with respect and admiration. That night, after the restaurant closed, the core resistance group gathered to plan the next steps. Besides Nathan, Richard, Stephen, and Ashley, the group now included Mrs. Dorothy, Michael, Mr. Anthony, Mrs. Margaret, and 2 new people. Jennifer, a young lawyer who had heard about the case and offered to help pro bono, and Father Francis, a progressive priest who worked with immigrants and minorities in the area. "The situation is escalating," Jennifer explained, looking at her notes. The threats against Stephen show that they're desperate. This could be good or bad. How so? Nathan asked. Good because it means we're really bothering them. Bad because desperate people do more extreme things. Father Francis spoke up. In my experience working with similar situations, when exploiters start using physical violence, it's because they know they're losing control of the situation. And what do we do now? Richard asked. We continue, Nathan said with determination, but with more caution and more organization. Nathan is right, Jennifer agreed. We'll keep documenting the cases, but now we'll also create a protection network for the people who are helping. No one walks alone. Everyone has backup. And we'll use the law to our advantage, Father Francis added. I have contacts in human rights organizations that can help us pressure the competent authorities. Stephen raised his hand hesitantly. Can I suggest something? Of course, Nathan encouraged. Harrison has a weakness. He's very proud and doesn't like to appear weak in front of the other business owners in the area. If we can publicly expose what he does, he'll lose his reputation and much of the support he has. How do we do that? Ashley asked. There's a neighborhood business association that meets every month, Mr. Anthony explained. If we can bring our cause there in front of all the other business owners, he won't be able to deny or cover it up, Jennifer completed, excited about the idea. It's an excellent strategy. But it will be dangerous, Mrs. Dorothy warned. If we confront him publicly, there's no turning back. There's already no turning back, Michael said calmly. After he had Stephen beaten, it became clear this will end one way or another. And which way would you prefer it to end? Nathan asked. Should we hide afraid, letting him keep exploiting people, or should we hold our heads high, knowing we did the right thing? When you put it like that, it doesn't seem like there's a choice, Richard commented with a smile. There really isn't a choice, Emma said from the table where she was coloring a drawing. Daddy always says the right choice is always obvious. The hard part is having the courage to make it. The adults fell silent for a moment, impressed once again by the child's wisdom. So it's decided, Father Francis declared. We're going to the business association meeting, but we'll go prepared. Prepared how? Ashley asked. With all the documented evidence, with prepared witnesses, and with a clear strategy, Jennifer explained. And most importantly, we go together. All of us. Including me? Emma asked, looking up from her drawing. The adults exchanged glances, uncertain. The meeting could be tense, maybe even dangerous for a child. Princess, Nathan said gently, maybe it's best you stay with Mrs. Dorothy that night. But Daddy, I was the one who saw everything first. I was the one who told you to help Ashley. That's true, Emma, Richard agreed. But, no buts, Emma interrupted with surprising determination. If I had the courage to ask for help when I saw Ashley suffering, I have the courage to be there when you go to talk about it. Father Francis smiled. You know what? Maybe Emma is right. Sometimes the presence of innocence is exactly what a situation needs. And besides, Stephen added, who would have the courage to do something bad in front of a child? Her presence might even protect us. Nathan looked at his daughter, seeing in her the same determination that had led him to confront the 3 men that first night. All right, Princess. You'll come with us. Thank you, Daddy. I promise I'll behave. You always behave, Emma. Just be yourself. That's what makes you special. The business association meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. During the preparation days, the group worked intensely to organize all the documentation and prepare the people who would give testimony. Jennifer had created a complete dossier with all the documented cases, including photographs, written statements, and even some audio recordings that some workers had managed to secretly make of the threats. Ashley had convinced 3 other immigrants who were being exploited to give testimony. It wasn't easy. They were terrified of possible retaliation, but the trust they had developed in Ashley and the group encouraged them to speak. Stephen provided inside information on how the scheme worked, including details about the fraudulent contracts and the systematic threats used to keep the victims silent. Mr. Anthony used his connections in the business community to ensure that several honest merchants would be present at the meeting, creating a favorable audience for their accusations. Father Francis mobilized human rights organizations and immigrant support groups, which would send representatives to give credibility and institutional support to the cause. On the eve of the meeting, the group gathered one last time at the restaurant to make final adjustments to the plan. The tension was palpable. Everyone knew they were about to cross a line from which there was no turning back. "Everyone," Nathan said, looking at each person at the table, "I want you to know that I'm proud of all of us, no matter what happens tomorrow." "We're going to succeed," Ashley said with conviction. "I feel like we're going to succeed." "How do you know?" Mrs. Dorothy asked. "Because we have something that Harrison will never have," Emma answered, before Ashley could speak. "We have love for each other." "That's true," Father Francis agreed, "and love always conquers fear in the end." "Amen to that," Richard said, and everyone laughed at the unexpected solemnity. "So, see you tomorrow, everyone," Jennifer said, putting away her papers. "And remember, no matter what happens, we're doing the right thing." "The only right thing," Nathan corrected. "There was no other option from the start." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. Thursday arrived with a light rain that filled the air in Charlotte with electricity. Nathan woke up early, more nervous than he had been in a long time. Emma, on the other hand, seemed strangely calm, as if she knew everything would work out. "Daddy, are you scared?" she asked while they were having breakfast. "A little bit," Nathan admitted, "but it's a good kind of fear. It's the kind of fear you feel when you're about to do something important. Like when I went to talk to the principal about the boy who was hitting others. Exactly like that. Then it's okay, because that day turned out fine, and today will too." Nathan smiled at his daughter's simple and comforting logic. Indeed, Emma had faced difficult situations before, and always with the same courage she was showing now. At 7 in the evening, the Commercial Association's hall was more crowded than usual. The news that there would be important allegations at the meeting had spread through the community, attracting not only regular members but also curious onlookers and supporters. Harrison was present, accompanied by 2 men nobody recognized, but who clearly weren't local business owners. He was speaking quietly with some association members, probably trying to influence their perception before the allegations began. Nathan's group entered together, causing a murmur in the hall. They had decided to wear their best clothes for the occasion, conveying seriousness and respect. Emma looked particularly beautiful, wearing a blue dress that Mrs. Dorothy had lent her, and with her hair styled in braids. "Good evening, everyone," the association president, a 60-year-old man named Harold, opened the meeting. "Before we begin our regular agenda, time has been requested for some members of our community to make an important presentation." "Mr. Harold," Harrison stood up. "With all due respect, wouldn't it be more appropriate to only deal with matters related to local commerce? I don't see why we should give space for—" "For what, Mr. Harrison?" Nathan also stood up, politely interrupting him. "For members of our community to speak about problems that directly affect local commerce." "You're not even a business owner," Harrison retorted disdainfully. "What are your qualifications to speak here?" Emma, sitting beside her father, stood up on her chair. "His qualification is that he cares about people," she said, with her clear, childish voice that cut through the tension in the room. A heavy silence fell over the hall. All eyes turned to the girl, who remained standing with a dignified posture that was impressive for someone her age. "And who are you, young lady?" Harold asked kindly. "I'm Emma Carter, Nathan's daughter. And I was the one who saw you," she pointed at Harrison, "making a pregnant woman cry because you wanted to force her to sign papers she didn't want to sign." The murmur in the hall grew louder. Harrison became visibly uncomfortable, being publicly confronted by a child. "Mr. Harold," Jennifer stood up. "My name is Jennifer Taylor. I'm a lawyer, and I would like to present evidence of a systematic labor exploitation scheme happening in our region." "This is ridiculous," Harrison protested. "These people are trying to slander honest business owners with baseless accusations." "Then let's examine the evidence," Father Francis suggested calmly. "If they're baseless, there's nothing to fear." Harold quickly consulted other members of the association's board and decided, "Very well, we'll hear the presentation, but please remain civil." Jennifer began the presentation meticulously and professionally. She showed documents, read testimonies and presented photographic evidence of the abusive contracts being forced upon the workers. Ashley was the first witness to speak. With her belly already quite evident, she recounted her experience in an emotional yet controlled manner, describing the threats she had received and how she had been saved by the intervention of Nathan and Emma. "I thought I was going to lose my baby from all the stress," she said, her voice choked. "But these people showed me that there's still kindness in the world." Stephen was next to speak, causing general surprise by identifying himself as someone who had participated in the scheme but decided to switch sides. "I was wrong," he said simply, "very wrong, and I decided I'd rather do the right thing, even if it's too late to undo the harm I've already done." The three immigrants Ashley had convinced to testify spoke next, each telling a similar story of exploitation and fear. Their voices trembled, but the presence of the entire support group gave them courage to continue. Harrison tried to interrupt several times, claiming it was all just misunderstandings or disgruntled employees trying to slander successful business owners. But each interruption only reinforced the image of someone trying to hide the truth. "Mr. Harrison," Mr. Anthony stood up when it was his turn to speak. "I've known you for 15 years. We've done business together, and I can say with certainty that the man I see today is not the same one I knew." "What do you mean by that, Anthony?" Harrison asked, clearly concerned by the statement from someone who had been his ally. "I mean you've lost your way. You've forgotten that business is done with honesty, not with fear and exploitation." Mrs. Margaret also spoke, describing how she had been pressured to accept similar schemes in her bakery. Her advanced age and impeccable reputation in the community gave extra weight to her testimony. "I'm 70 years old," she said in a firm voice, "and I've never seen anyone use the suffering of others to make money the way this man does." Michael surprised everyone by asking to speak. Normally shy, he stood up and in his deep, calm voice recounted how he had been exploited in the very restaurant where he worked. "I kept quiet because I need to work, but when I saw they were going to do the same thing to a pregnant woman, I couldn't stay silent." David complimented Michael's testimony, revealing details about how Brandon coordinated the scheme within the restaurant, always under Harrison's direction. Richard spoke last among the witnesses, admitting his responsibility for not noticing what was happening in his own establishment, but praising his employees' courage in exposing the situation. "What these employees did was give me a chance to be a better business owner," he said, "and I'll spend the rest of my career trying to deserve their trust." When everyone had finished speaking, a heavy silence filled the room. It was clear the evidence was overwhelming, and the community was deeply shocked by the extent of the scheme. Harold stood up to make final remarks when Emma asked to speak again. Nathan hesitated, but the girl was already on her feet. "Can I say one small thing?" she asked politely. "Of course, dear," Harold said affectionately. Emma turned to look directly at Harrison. "Sir, I don't know much about business or laws, but I know when someone is being mean to someone else." Harrison couldn't hold the child's gaze and looked down. "My daddy taught me that we always have to protect those who can't protect themselves," Emma continued. "And Ashley couldn't protect herself because she was scared. But now she doesn't need to be scared anymore, because there are lots of people who care about her." The girl paused, looking around the hall, "And I think that's what a community does. We take care of each other." When Emma finished speaking, several people in the audience had teary eyes. The simplicity and sincerity of her words had touched something deep in everyone present. "Very well," Harold said, discreetly wiping his own eyes. "Let's vote. All those in favor of formally supporting the complaints presented and excluding Mr. Harrison from our association." Nearly all hands went up. Only 3 or 4 people didn't vote, probably out of fear of retaliation. "Approved by a wide majority," Harold announced. "Mr. Harrison, you are no longer welcome at this association's meetings." Harrison stood up slowly, his face red with anger and humiliation. He looked around the hall, clearly searching for support, but found only looks of disappointment and disapproval. "You'll regret this," he said quietly, but everyone could hear. "All of you." "No, Mr. Harrison," Emma said, still standing on the chair. "You're the one who'll regret it if you keep being mean. Because mean people end up alone and lonely people get sad. The girl's childlike wisdom was like a final slap to Harrison's arrogance. He left the hall, followed by his two companions, without looking back. As soon as he left, the hall burst into applause. People stood up, hugged each other, and several came to congratulate Nathan's group for their courage in exposing the situation. "You did something important today," Harold said, shaking each of their hands. "Something that will make our community stronger and more just." "We only did what anyone should do," Nathan replied modestly. "No, Nathan," Father Francis corrected. "You did what not everyone has the courage to do, and that made all the difference." Ashley approached Emma and knelt to the girl's height. "Thank you, Emma, for seeing that I needed help, for asking your dad to help me, for giving me hope." "You don't need to thank me," Emma replied, hugging Ashley. "Now you're part of our family, and family always takes care of each other." Jennifer approached the group with a look of professional satisfaction. "Everyone, this was just the beginning. Now that we have the official support of the Business Association, we can take these complaints to the proper authorities." "And then," Stephen asked, "what will happen to Harrison?" "He'll have to answer for his actions, and more importantly, he won't be able to keep exploiting people like he was doing." Mr. Anthony joined the group. "And we'll make sure other business owners in the area know what happened here, so no one else gets involved with that kind of scheme." "What if he tries to get revenge?" Mrs. Dorothy asked, worried. "He might try," Nathan admitted, "but now he knows we're not alone and that our community doesn't tolerate that kind of thing." "Besides," Richard added with a smile, "he was publicly humiliated by a 10-year-old. I don't think his self-esteem is doing too well." Everyone laughed, relieving some of the tension of the moment. "Daddy?" Emma tugged at Nathan's sleeve. "Did we win?" "We did, Princess. But the most important thing wasn't winning." "What was it then?" "It was doing the right thing, even when it was hard. Even when I was scared." Emma nodded seriously. "And now will Ashley and her baby be okay?" "They'll be just fine," Ashley answered for herself. "Thanks to you and your dad and all those other heroes." "We're not heroes," Emma protested. "We just did what had to be done. And that's exactly what makes someone a hero," Father Francis observed. "Doing what needs to be done, even when nobody's watching, even when it's hard." In the weeks following the Business Association meeting, the community's life changed dramatically. The public exposure of Harrison's scheme had a domino effect, encouraging victims from other neighborhoods to report similar situations. Jennifer organized a free legal support office for exploited workers, operating 3 days a week at the Southern Flavor restaurant itself. The initiative attracted other volunteer lawyers and became a reference point for the entire region. Ashley flourished in her new work and living environment. With her documentation situation regularized through help from Father Francis and human rights organizations, she could finally relax and properly prepare for the baby's arrival. Richard implemented a model program for labor conditions at his restaurant, which began receiving visits from other business owners interested in learning how to create a fairer and more humane work environment. Stephen became a valuable ally in the fight against labor exploitation, using his inside knowledge of the schemes to help other victims break free. He had found a way to turn his guilt into positive action. Mrs. Dorothy officially took on the role of Employee Wellness Coordinator, creating a mutual support system that extended beyond work hours. Michael, David, and the other employees who had been exploited became mentors for new workers, helping them recognize and avoid abusive situations. Mr. Anthony and Mrs. Margaret formed an alliance among the neighborhood's small business owners, creating a mutual support network that made it difficult for exploiters like Harrison to operate. Father Francis expanded his immigrant support programs, using the success of Ashley's case as an example that it was possible to overcome exploitation through community unity. Nathan adapted well to his new supervisor position, discovering he had a natural talent for leadership and conflict mediation. He became a respected figure not just in the restaurant, but throughout the community. Emma continued accompanying her father to work some nights, but now had an even more special space prepared for her, with a small table where she could do homework or draw. She became the restaurant's official mascot, always greeted with smiles and affection by employees and customers. But the real change was in the atmosphere of the place. The Southern Flavor restaurant had transformed into much more than a business establishment. It was a symbol that it was possible to do business while maintaining human dignity, a place where everyone was truly treated like family. 3 months after the business association meeting, on a particularly busy night, Nathan stopped for a moment to observe the environment around him. Ashley was serving a table of regular customers who always requested to be served by her, demonstrating the affection the community had developed for the young mother. Mrs. Dorothy was humming in the kitchen while preparing the house specialties. Michael was cleaning tables with a genuine smile on his face, something Nathan had never seen before. David was chatting animatedly with the other cooks, planning new dishes for the menu. Emma was at her special little table but wasn't doing homework. Instead, she was drawing something with intense concentration. "What are you drawing there, Princess?" Nathan asked, approaching. "I'm drawing our family," Emma replied, proudly showing her work. The drawing showed the restaurant with all the people who worked there, including Richard, Mrs. Dorothy, Ashley with a huge belly, Michael, David, Stephen, Father Francis, Jennifer, Mr. Anthony, Mrs. Margaret, and many other figures as colorful stick people. "Our family is very big," Nathan observed with a smile. "It is, and it's going to get even bigger when Ashley's baby is born." "You're right, and you know what? I think your mom would be very proud to see how our family has grown." Emma nodded seriously. "I think she already knew it would grow. That's why she chose you to be my dad, because she knew you would teach people to take care of each other." The child's wisdom continued to surprise Nathan. He knelt beside his daughter and hugged her. "And you taught me that we're never too small to make a difference, Princess." "I didn't teach you that, Dad. You always knew it. You just forgot a little, and I reminded you." Ashley approached the table carrying an empty tray. "What are you two talking about over there?" "We're talking about family," Emma replied, showing the drawing to Ashley. "That's beautiful, Emma. You drew me really fat." Ashley laughed, touching her belly. "It's because you have a baby in there, and babies are important." "They really are. And this baby will be lucky to grow up in a family like ours." "Ashley," Nathan said, "have you thought about the baby's name yet?" "Yes, I have. If it's a girl, she'll be named Hope. If it's a boy, he'll be Gabriel." "Beautiful names," Emma approved. "But why those names?" "Hope because that's what you gave me, and Gabriel because he was an angel who brought me to you." Ashley affectionately touched Emma's head. "And if you agree, Emma, I'd like you to be the baby's godmother." Emma's eyes widened with surprise and joy. "Really? I can be the godmother?" "Of course you can. You'll be the youngest and bravest godmother that ever existed." Emma stood up and hugged Ashley with all the strength her small arms allowed. "Thank you, Ashley. I'll take care of your baby forever." "And I'll help you take care," Nathan promised, moved by the scene. Richard approached the group, drawn by the visible emotion in the encounter. "What's happening here?" "Emma is going to be my baby's godmother," Ashley announced proudly. "What wonderful news! And have you thought about who will be the godfather?" Ashley and Nathan exchanged glances. It was a question neither of them had considered yet. "I have a suggestion," Emma said with her characteristic frankness. "How about Uncle Richard? He takes care of everyone here at the restaurant, so he knows how to take care of children." Richard was visibly moved by the suggestion. "It would be an honor if Ashley agrees." "Of course I agree," Ashley said, now with tears of happiness in her eyes. "You are all my family. Who better to be my child's godfather?" "And Mrs. Dorothy can be the honorary grandma," Emma suggested, always thinking of including everyone, "because every child needs a grandma who makes delicious food." Mrs. Dorothy, who had approached upon hearing the emotional voices, began to cry openly. "Good heavens, child, you're going to make me cry until I can't anymore." "It's tears of happiness, Mrs. Dorothy," Emma said wisely. "Tears of happiness are good." "Yes, my dear, they're the best tears there are." That night, after everyone had left and the restaurant was closed, Nathan and Emma walked home through the familiar streets of the neighborhood. The air was fresh, and the stars shone above them. "Dad," Emma said, holding her father's hand, "do you remember when it was just you and me?" "Yes, I remember, Princess. Why?" It was nice when it was just you and me. But it's even better being all of us. Nathan stopped walking and looked at his daughter. You're right, it's much better being all of us. And you know what the best part is. What? We'll never be alone again, because now we have a real family. Nathan hugged his daughter right there on the sidewalk under the starlight. She was right. They had started this journey as father and daughter trying to survive in a tough world, but they had found something much bigger, a community of people who genuinely cared for one another. I love you, Princess. I love you too, Dad. And I love our big family too. 2 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Hope Carter Santos was born at St. Luke's Hospital in Charlotte. Ashley had chosen to make the Carter surname official as a way to honor the family that had adopted her. Nathan and Emma were the first to visit the new mom at the hospital. Emma held a bouquet of flowers she had picked out herself from the neighborhood flower shop, insisting on paying with her own allowance money. "She's beautiful," Emma whispered, looking at the baby sleeping in Ashley's arms. "She looks just like her mom," Nathan observed. "She's going to be a strong girl." "She already is strong," Ashley said proudly. "She was born after just 4 hours of labor. The nurse said she'd never seen anything like it." "Brave babies are born into brave families," Emma declared with her unique logic. Hope opened her little dark eyes at that moment, as if she had heard her godmother speaking. Emma was delighted. "Can I touch her little hand?" "Of course you can. You're the godmother." Emma gently touched the baby's tiny hand, which immediately grasped the girl's finger with surprising strength. "She really is strong," Emma laughed. "And she's going to be very protected." "Why?" Ashley asked. "Because there are so many people who love her. Dad, me, you, Uncle Richard, Grandma Dorothy, Uncle Michael, Uncle David, Father Francis, Aunt Jennifer, Grandpa Anthony, Grandma Margaret, Uncle Stephen." "Wow," Nathan interrupted with a laugh. "That's quite a long list." "And it's going to get even longer," Emma said with conviction, "because love calls for more love." Ashley looked at Emma with deep admiration. "How are you so wise, Emma?" "I'm not wise. I just pay attention to things, and things show that when we're good to others, others are good to us too." Hope made a little noise, as if agreeing with her godmother's words. Everyone laughed at the coincidence. "I think she's approving her godmother's speech," Nathan observed. "Of course she is," Emma said proudly. "The two of us are going to be best friends." In the following days, the Southern Flavor restaurant prepared to welcome the new family member. Richard had given Ashley 2 weeks of paid leave, and Mrs. Dorothy had prepared a collection of special foods to help with breastfeeding. When Ashley returned to work, she brought Hope with her. Richard had set up a makeshift nursery in the office, where the baby could stay safe while her mother worked. Several employees took turns helping care for the girl during work hours. Emma was absolutely devoted to her goddaughter. Every night she accompanied her father to work. She spent most of her time by the nursery, softly singing to Hope or telling children's stories. "Hope," Emma would say to the baby, "you were born into the coolest family in the world. And when you grow up, I'm going to teach you everything Dad taught me about taking care of people." Nathan listened to these conversations with his heart full of pride. His daughter was learning the value of caring for others through her own experience of being cared for by a loving community. One evening, while Emma was rocking Hope in the makeshift nursery, Father Francis came to visit the restaurant to see how everyone was adapting to the new routine. "How is our newest godmother?" he asked Emma. "I'm learning a lot," Emma replied seriously. "Taking care of a baby is hard, but it's rewarding too." "And what are you learning?" "I'm learning that love is work. It's not just feeling affection. It's doing things to take care of the person we love." Father Francis was impressed by the depth of the observation. "That's a very important lesson, Emma. Many adults take years to learn that." "But it's easy to see," Emma said, as if it were obvious. "Daddy loves me, so he works hard to take care of me. Ashley loves Hope, so she wakes up at night to give her a bottle. Uncle Richard loves all of us, so he makes the restaurant a good place to work." "You're right. Love is action. And that's why our family is so big, because there are many people willing to work to take care of others." Hope slept peacefully in Emma's arms, as if the wise words of her godmother were the most comforting lullaby in the world. 6 months after Hope's birth, the community around Southern Flavor had been completely transformed. The ethical business model that Richard had implemented inspired other local entrepreneurs, creating a movement of renewal in the region's labor practices. Jennifer had formalized the legal support office, which now operated in its own room next to the restaurant. She had recruited other volunteer lawyers and created partnerships with human rights organizations to expand the project's reach. Stephen had opened his own small business, a repair shop, following the same ethical principles he had learned by observing the restaurant's transformation. He preferentially hired people who had been victims of labor exploitation, offering them a second chance. Mr. Anthony and Mrs. Margaret had formalized the support network among small business owners, creating an association that offered mutual protection against attempts at exploitation and blackmail. Father Francis significantly expanded the immigrant support programs, using the success of Ashley's integration as a model for other cases. Michael was promoted to head of cleaning and maintenance, helping Nathan with supervision and becoming a mentor for new employees. David took on a leadership position in the kitchen, creating a collaborative and respectful work environment that became a reference for other restaurants. Mrs. Dorothy continued as wellness coordinator, but now also offered cooking classes for community members, especially young mothers who wanted to learn how to prepare nutritious and economical meals. Ashley had enrolled in a night administration course with the goal of one day having her own business. Richard had offered to be her mentor during this academic journey. Nathan discovered he had a talent for conflict mediation and began offering this service informally to other businesses in the area. His reputation for honesty and fairness had spread far beyond the original neighborhood. Emma continued to be the soul of the operation, always observing, always caring, always reminding everyone of what really matters. She had developed an even greater sense of responsibility as Hope's godmother, and the two children were already inseparable. But perhaps the most significant change was in the very atmosphere of the community. There was a palpable feeling that people cared about each other, that no one needed to face difficulties alone, that there would always be a support network available for those in need. One Sunday afternoon, 8 months after Hope's birth, the entire extended family gathered at the restaurant for a special lunch. It was a tradition that had started spontaneously and now happened every month. The main table had been expanded to accommodate more than 20 people: Nathan and Emma, Ashley and Hope, Richard, Mrs. Dorothy, Michael and his wife, David and his 2 young children, Stephen and his daughter, who had moved to Charlotte to live with her father, Father Francis, Jennifer, Mr. Anthony and Mrs. Margaret, and several other people who had joined the community over the months. Everyone, Richard stood up to make a toast. I want to thank you all for being here today. And especially I want to thank you for teaching me the true meaning of family. Family isn't just who you're born with, Emma added, holding Hope in her lap. Family is who chooses to stay together. Exactly, Nathan agreed, looking around the table full of beloved faces. And we choose to stay together, take care of each other, and build something beautiful. And we really have built it, Ashley said, moved. When I arrived here, I was alone and scared. Now I have more family than I ever dreamed of having. And a daughter who will grow up knowing what true love is, Mrs. Dorothy added, making faces at Hope, who responded with giggles. Speaking of growing up, Father Francis said with a mysterious smile, I have some news to share with you. Everyone turned to him, curious. Your story has reached the ears of important people, and now several cities are interested in replicating the ethical business model and community support we created here. What does that mean? Jennifer asked. It means you didn't just save a pregnant waitress on a Tuesday night. You started a movement that could transform many communities. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully, but we didn't do anything special. We just did what was right. And that's exactly what makes it special, little one, Father Francis explained. When ordinary people do the right thing, it inspires other ordinary people to do the same. It's like ripples in water, Stephen observed. You throw a stone, and the ripples spread farther and farther. And our stone was Emma asking to help Ashley, Nathan said, running his hand through his daughter's hair. Actually, Emma corrected with her characteristic honesty, the stone was Ashley needing help. I just saw the stone and told you all." Everyone laughed at the girl's modesty. "It doesn't matter who the stone was," Richard said. "What matters is that we all decided to make positive ripples. And we'll keep doing it," Mr. Anthony declared, "because now we know how good it is to live in a community where people care." "And we know it's not hard," Mrs. Margaret added. "You just need to pay attention to others and have the courage to act." Hope chose that moment to start crying, probably hungry. Ashley stood up to take her from Emma, but several people offered to help at the same time. "I'll hold her while you prepare the bottle," Mrs. Dorothy offered. "I'll get the bottle," Michael volunteered. "I have clean diapers here," Jennifer said, rummaging in her bag. "I can sing to her to stop crying," Stephen's daughter suggested timidly. Emma smiled as she watched the whole mobilization. "See? Hope will never be alone. There are plenty of people who want to take care of her." "That's how it should be for all children," Father Francis remarked. "All should grow up knowing they are loved and protected by an entire community. And that's how it will be for the next children born here," Nathan said with conviction, "because now we know how to do it." Ashley returned with Hope, already fed and calm. The baby was alert and curious, looking around the table full of people who loved her. "Hope," Emma said softly to her goddaughter, "when you grow up, you'll understand how lucky you are. You were born into a family where everyone cares about everyone else. And you'll learn to do the same," Ashley added. "You'll learn to take care of others and do what's right." "Yes, she will," Nathan agreed, "because that's our family tradition, taking care of each other." "And never pretending not to see when someone is suffering," Emma finished, remembering the words that had started this whole journey. As the afternoon progressed and conversations multiplied around the table, Nathan allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Less than a year earlier, he was just an invisible janitor trying to survive and raise his daughter alone. Now he was part of a vibrant community, leader of a social transformation movement, and father to a girl who had become a symbol of courage and compassion. But more than anything, he had learned that true wealth wasn't in material possessions or social status. It was in belonging to a network of people who genuinely cared for one another. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" Emma asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how funny life is," Nathan replied. "Sometimes we think we're helping someone, but we're actually being helped." "How so?" "When you asked me to help Ashley, I thought I was doing her a favor, but actually helping Ashley brought us this whole new family." Emma nodded with understanding. "It's like planting a seed. We plant it to get fruit, but we gain a whole tree." "Exactly. And our tree is full of good fruit. And it will keep growing," Emma said with conviction, "because every time someone in our family helps someone new, our tree grows more branches." Nathan hugged his daughter, amazed once again by her wisdom. Emma had found a poetic way to describe how kindness multiplies when practiced sincerely. Hope babbled something unintelligible at that moment, as if wanting to join the conversation. Emma immediately turned to her goddaughter. "What is it, Hope? Do you want to talk about our family too?" The baby smiled, producing more happy babbles that made the whole table laugh. "She's saying she agrees," Emma translated with authority, "and that she's happy to be part of our tree." "How do you know that?" David asked, amused. "Babies always tell the truth," Emma explained. "They just speak a language that only those with pure hearts can understand." "And you have a pure heart, Emma," Ashley said affectionately. "We all do," Emma corrected. "That's why we understand each other, and that's why our family works so well." As the sun set over Charlotte, coloring the sky with golden and pink hues visible through the restaurant windows, the extended family gathering began to wind down. But no one seemed in a hurry to leave. "Everyone," Richard said eventually, "I know we don't want this moment to end, but tomorrow is Monday and we all have responsibilities." "But we'll see each other tomorrow anyway," Michael reminded, "and the day after too, and the day after that." "That's one of the advantages of us all working together," David added. "Our family meets every day." "And on Sundays we have special lunch," Emma declared. "Forever. Forever is a long time," Father Francis said gently. "How about we start with 'for now' and see how it goes?" "Forever starts with For now, Emma replied, with her peculiar logic. If we keep doing good for now, one day it becomes forever. She's right, Jennifer agreed. Everything good starts with a decision to do right in the present moment. And we decided to do right, Stephen stated. Every day, in every situation. Especially when it's difficult, Nathan added, because it's when it's hard that doing the right thing matters most. As people began saying goodbye, hugging each other and making plans for the following week, Emma approached Ashley with Hope. Ashley, can I say goodnight to Hope? Of course, dear. You're the godmother. Emma gently kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, Good night, Hope. Dream of beautiful things. And remember, you're very loved. Hope responded with a toothless smile that melted everyone's hearts. She understood, Emma said with satisfaction. Babies always understand when we speak with love. And you always speak with love, Emma, Mrs. Dorothy observed, tenderly stroking the girl's hair. It's because I learned from Daddy. He always spoke to me with love even when he was sad or tired. Nathan felt his eyes fill with tears. Hearing his daughter acknowledge his efforts as a single father was one of the most rewarding experiences of his life. And now, Hope will learn the same thing, he said, because she has a godmother who will teach her about love. And a wonderful mother, Emma added, smiling at Ashley. And lots of uncles and aunts and grandmas and grandpas who will help too. Ashley hugged Emma with one arm while holding Hope with the other. Thank you, Emma, for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for getting help for me, for giving me a family. You don't need to thank me, Emma replied, as always. Family doesn't thank family. Family just loves family. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story. Where are you watching from? If you were moved by the journey of Nathan, Emma, Ashley, and this whole family that formed, leave your comment with sincere words. Do you believe small acts of courage can truly transform entire communities? We'd love to read your opinion. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one. Thank you so much for your company.